To Kill a Mockingbird, Part 2 Overview. So if you watched Part 1 Overview, which I recommend you doing, you know that the chapter summaries give you a breakdown of the specifics of each chapter, kind of a micro view, as I labeled it, but the overviews give a big picture or a macro view. Part 1 of the book established the overall protected world of Jem, Scout, and Dill. Their boundaries ranged pretty much from one end of the street to the other, with the most threatening things being a cranky old lady and a scary neighbor that nobody ever saw. Life wasn't perfect. They had lost their mother, but the neighborhood and town was a safe place for them, and they were naive and clueless about the darker issues that plagued the adult world. However, by the end of Part 1, we saw that the childhood innocence began to crumble, and we know that the adult world is intruding more and more on the kids' protected world. So understand that most stories progress towards a climax, a high point of the suspense and action that resolves or works itself out as the conflicts and issues in the story are addressed, right? The events of the story leading up to this is called the rising action, but what we have in To Kill a Mockingbird is a story that develops within the larger story, and the two plots intersect in a second climax at the end of the novel. So the first story is one about the kids, their world, and their preoccupation with a mysterious, reclusive neighbor. The second story involves their father, his defending Tom Robinson, and the firestorm that this creates with the racist white South, which comes crashing into the kids' world, shattering their innocence. Part 2 right away starts to separate Jem more and more from Scout in terms of his maturation, which becomes important as he processes the trial and what's happening in the adult world on a deeper level than Scout in her young age is capable. She's still young and immature. Dill is brought back into the plot to go through the experience of the trial with Jem and Scout, and Aunt Alexandra also comes to live with them, and she serves to contrast Atticus's more open-minded way of thinking, where he rejects one person's superiority over another, whether it's because of race or family tree, with her more rigid and closed perspective, where family line means a great deal, and different races are looked at with an us and them attitude. The scene is set for the secondary plotline of the trial to become the main focus of the novel for a little while. The trial is set up to expose the evil of racism, that at its core, racism is unreasonable and has illogical biases that elevate one group above another with no rational basis. Tom is a kind-hearted, giving family man who also happens to be crippled in such a way that makes the accusations against him not only unlikely but laughable. It's a joke. The accusers are the aggressors in the story. It's a family, the Ewells, that are disliked and mostly ignored in the town. They flaunt many laws and live off the goodwill and charity of the town and the government. The father, Bob Ewell, is a detestable man who puts his love of alcohol above his children and their needs, and he has no issue allowing an innocent man to die to protect a false pride in his family and his skin color. In fact, he relies on his skin color to be what would show him to be telling the truth. As readers, we have empathy with Tom Robinson. We admire Atticus for standing up for him. We detest the Ewells for lying to cover up the truth. Despite the clarity of the case, we know Tom is innocent, few adults and the children are the only ones not blinded by racism. In the situation portrayed by Lee in the novel, the persistent and stubborn racism is exposed for how ridiculous it is, as it has to stick to its position regardless of the truth and the facts. As readers, we understand Jem's disbelief that such an injustice could possibly occur against what is clearly right and true, but we also connect with Atticus and Reverend Sykes and Miss Maudie, who know the outcome of the case before it even starts. It's the sad truth that racism is going to win out over what's right. Atticus's closing speech is a powerful accusation against the entrenched racism of the South that would choose wrong over right simply on the basis of skin color. As the trial fades and the novel settles back into the world of the children, there are a few things left unresolved in the novel. We have to consider the growing maturity of Scout and Jem, best measured by the main lessons Atticus has tried to instill from the beginning of the novel. The one about understanding something from someone else's point of view, and the other involving the title of the novel, Killing a Mockingbird. We also look for resolution with two characters, the mysterious Boo Radley and the dark and persistent evil of Bob Ewell, who's still lurking around through the last pages of the book. While the guilty verdict could be considered the climax of the secondary plot in the novel, the climax of the attack on the children at the end serves to bring resolution to the life lessons of the novel, as well as closure with Boo and Bob, right? The misunderstood and solitary kind of specter of Scout and Jem's childhood preoccupation becomes their guardian angel, saving them from the underestimated and desperate antagonist of the novel, Bob, who tries to get revenge on Atticus by attacking his children. Through this, we see maturation in Scout as she is finally able to understand and apply the lessons from her father that started at the beginning. For one, we see how she is able to see that if the sheriff were to identify Boo as the hero who saved the children from Bob's attack, Boo would suffer from the attention and being in the spotlight. And she wisely connects Boo as a mockingbird and his exposure in the town similar to killing that mockingbird. Second, when Scout stands on the Radley porch at the end, the last chapter, she imagines seeing the town and their lives play out for Boo from the vantage point of his window. In understanding where Boo is coming from, we see that she is able to apply this to better understand her mysterious neighbor. Again, this is a very broad overview of part 2, so to really understand the details and flow of the second half of the novel, it's important to do the chapter readings and the summaries of each chapter. Hopefully you'll find those useful. Thanks for listening. Feel free to put any questions or comments in the box below.